Thank you for joining us today, Ahmed. You've been a supporter of Peace One Day's mission for almost 25 years. What motivated you to support Peace One Day's mission?
It's very easy to answer that question. Peace is something very easy to support, isn't it? Because without peace, you will have no prosperity at the end of the line. I support it because I enjoy watching people, especially children, playing, interacting in a secure, healthy, harmonious environment. Because peace is essential for development. You can't have development in any society or country. That is the development of the institutions, the development of the industry, without a peaceful environment. So there must be peace within our communities, our societies, our countries, and that only comes with good governance. So peace and development will not happen without good governance, and that means respect for the rule of law and the human rights and equality of every citizen, regardless of their color, creed, and of course, gender balance is important. So those three ingredients, peace, development, will never happen in any country without respect for human rights and the rule of law. And they're all three of them are the pillars upon which we build our communities. So that's why I support your mission. And you do it very well. You do it passionately, you and your team. It's all about promoting the concept of peace by institutionalizing Peace Day. It's not just about promoting one day. It's about promoting the dividends of peace. And it's not just the absence of war. It's the presence of justice and respect for human rights. That's why I support your mission.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you so much. You've had such a rich career at the United Nations. What are the highlights that stand out for you?
Gosh, that is an enormous question. I've been very fortunate. It's true. I've been lucky to have been given opportunities to work with remarkable people, whether they were my mentors or my colleagues. And I'll be very brief, is Bonn, the Bonn Conference on Afghanistan. You see, after the fall of the Taliban, the United States and its allies needed to negotiate with the various parties in the country because there was no rule of law. It was lawless after the Taliban fell. And they asked Kofi Annan to appoint someone. He appointed Lakhdar Brahimi, another remarkable negotiator and mediator. And I was fortunate enough to be on his team. We expected the usual media presence, 300, 400 journalists, 1,300 showed up in a village called Königswinter in the outskirts of Bonn. There weren't enough hotel rooms, so they brought in a boat. It became the media boat. And that's where I was assigned. Brahimi wanted a complete media blackout during the conference. In other words, nobody from the media or even member states were allowed to attend his negotiations with the parties. And during the first plenary, he told the four parties, the Cyprus group, the Rome group, the Peshawar group, and the Northern Alliance, nobody talks to the media except my spokesman. So I was given a very heavy burden to brief 1,000 and more journalists every day for 10 days when the focus of the world was on the Bonn Conference for Afghanistan. And it was tremendously, it felt like a tremendous responsibility. I was very fortunate to have been given it. It was very stressful. The negotiations were late into the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And at 2 p.m. every day, I walked onto that boat and briefed the press. At the end of the day, Brahimi succeeded in signing what became known as the Bonn Agreement of Afghanistan. So there was a sense of achievement. It was very rewarding and very stressful at the same time, and a great relief to have been part of this mission. We went then to Kabul, installed or helped Karzai become president, and then Brahimi asked me to stay and help him build the mission, which is now UNAMA. You're familiar with UNAMA because you went there in 2007 to see how a day of peace would work. And there are many more, and many more people I worked with. I admired. Some of them gave their lives, like Sergio Vieira de Mello and Nadia Yunus. But I'll stop there.
What's your view on the evolution of humans and our ability to live peacefully together?
What a mind-boggling question. We need to have a profound philosophical discussion, and we have no time. So let me be brief. When you ask me a question like that, I think of philosophers like Hobbes and Kant and Michael Howard, who wrote about what he called the invention of peace. Because the natural state of mankind appears to have been a state of war ever since the Middle Ages, because life was brutal, it was nasty, it was short. Men had to struggle to survive for land, for food, for water. Let me race through the Middle Ages quickly to the Renaissance. In Europe, we're talking about the 18th, 19th century. The Renaissance brought enlightenment, and people began to understand that peace was a balance of powers, a balance between the powers, if we wanted to have a prosperous, harmonious society. And Kant, in general terms, said we can differentiate between negative peace and positive peace. Negative peace is just the absence of violence, but it's simmering. And positive peace is where we have justice and respect for human rights, which I just talked about. So, again, briefly, when I think about that trajectory from the brutal days of the Middle Ages through the Renaissance to the present day, I think about a very popular film title, which I will reverse: The Bad, the Good, and the Ugly. The ugly are the wars we have suffered. Do you know the casualties in World War I? Over 20 million. Do you know the casualties in World War II? Nearly 70 million between military and civilian, and causes related to war. So in 1945, the UN was created to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. To answer your question, yes, I believe men and women are capable of living in peace. Peace is in the minds of men, just as war is in the minds of men. It won't happen naturally. We have to make it. We have to make it happen. And I'll just end this answer by saying there's a lot of good in the world as well. In the last 100 years, there's been a lot of progress in science and technology, not just walking on the moon, but eradicating disease, developing technology. We're talking about AI now, which is rather frightening, but there you are. There has been a lot of good in the world, and yes, humans are capable of living in peace.
Could you tell us about when the United Nations carries out a peace-building mission? How does it work?
Well, I'll give you a classic example. The Secretary General of the United Nations briefs member states of the Security Council about a threat to peace and security. The Security Council then agrees that a peacekeeping mission is required. So they instruct the Secretary General to set up a peacekeeping mission. Now, there are two main types. Under Chapter 6, where the use of force is not authorized, where it's seen as only shoot if shot upon sidearms, and their mission is to consolidate a peace treaty. Then there's Chapter 7, which you have seen in the Congo, which is a robust mission where all measures needed, all measures necessary to preserve the peace can and should be used. The Secretary General goes to member states and said, the Security Council has authorized us to set up a peacekeeping mission. As you know, the United Nations has no troops of its own. The blue helmets we talk about come from member states. So member states start volunteering either troops or equipment of various kinds to that mission. The Secretary General has to calculate how strong the force should be, in other words, strong in numbers. And that's the classic. Now, across the years, over the years, peacekeeping has evolved. There are blue helmets, there are political missions, there are police missions to help nations with their security. And also, I'm sorry to say, we are seeing, I mean, over the past 75 years, which we are commemorating today, the International Day of UN Peacekeepers, over 70 missions were deployed. Over millions of blue helmets were deployed, and over 4,000 were killed in the line of duty to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. So that's the classic. Of course, there are multi-dimensional peacekeeping forces that include regional organizations like Afghanistan. As you saw in 2007, they had ISAF and they had NATO, and they have the UNAMA, which is the political mission. And today we have about, the United Nations has about 12, I believe, missions of various types. I hope that answers your question.
Peacekeeping is obviously an incredibly difficult and complex operation to carry out. Could you talk about some of the successes? Because, of course, we always hear about the negative. Talk to us about some of the successes of peacekeeping.
Oh, yeah. There have been a lot of successes. You see, the failures are very well publicized in the news, but not the successes. I can count at least 12 successful operations. I'll go through them very quickly. Namibia in 89-90, Cambodia in 92-93, and I was there with Boutros Ghali. Mozambique in 92-94, El Salvador, amazing peacekeeping success, 91-95, Guatemala, 97-99. Nobody's heard about the success of these missions. Timor-Leste, I was there too with Sergio Vieira de Mello, 99-2000. And I could go on. But I wouldn't say it's in trouble. It's evolving again. The Secretary General has launched a new agenda for peace. If you recall, Boutros Ghali launched the first agenda for peace in 1992. It is entirely conceivable that these operations have to evolve. Under Kofi Annan, there was the Brahimi report on peacekeeping. Today, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has asked member states to recommit to the peacekeeping operation in terms of political support, because there has to be political will. I should have mentioned that earlier. Number one, there has to be the political will from member states to deploy their troops in these areas of danger. So yes, just like any organization, the UN has to reconsider, reconceptualize, and renew something like the peacekeeping operations.
Kofi Annan was a successful and highly respected Secretary General. What was it about him that made him so successful?
Oh, gosh. In a word, his humanity. His humanity. And that means his ability to listen, his ability to connect with people. He was humble. He was thoughtful. He never raised his voice. And he remembered people. If he met you in the corridor, he would say, "Hello, Jeremy. How are you? And how's that daughter of yours, Rosie?" He would know your name, the names of your family. It was a remarkable trait. But he was also a remarkable peacemaker. In other words, he could connect with simple people, ordinary people, powerful people, powerless people, heads of state, equally. And he was able, in his quiet, humble manner. I mean, this is one of the traits of his leadership. He was able to bring you to his side. He was able to make you see why peace in your region, country, conflict should be and could be achieved. So that's where he was very successful. He had his successes. There were failures under his command, such as Rwanda and Srebrenica. He was Under Secretary General for Peacekeeping at the time, not Secretary General. He apologized for those. He commissioned an independent inquiry into those two crises, and a lot of lessons were learned. So he knew when to step back and assess. He knew when to move forward and strike when the iron was hot. In brief, he was humane and he had empathy. He was a great leader.
I know, Ahmed, that you've been hosting a podcast called Kofi Time. How can people listen to it?
Oh, it's very easy. You can go to wherever you access your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud. And the easiest, of course, is to go to kofiannanfoundation.org/podcast. The page will come up and all 10 episodes are there. Each episode deals with one subject matter, with one interviewee, and they're all fascinating. The last one is a group session with many people who worked with him, reflecting on their impressions and experiences. And the hashtag is #Kofi Time. #Kofi Time. Get it?
Thank you, Ahmed. It was wonderful to speak to you today. And of course, thank you for all the support that you've given Peace One Day for the last 25 years. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.